What's up, everyone? Welcome to TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian, reporting live from my home. But we've got a lot to get to today. And honestly, I don't want to waste any time. A lot of news broke throughout the day. And we had some stories that broke later yesterday that I definitely want to share with you all, including an interview that Candace Owens did on Piers Morgan's show in regard to her, sleuthing her investigations into the murder of Charlie Kirk. She had a meeting with Erica Kirk. Has she changed her mind after that meeting in regard to pursuing this investigation? We're going to get into all of that. We're going to check in on the economy and, more importantly, how the American people feel about the economy. We're going to, of course, dabble in some foreign policy related stories as well. But before we get to all of that, just want to encourage you to like and share the stream if you're watching us live. It's a great way to help us here at TYT. It's free, it's easy, it's quick. Please like the stream if you're watching us live. It'll help us with the algorithm. All right, without further ado, let's get to our first story.
And he loves Israel too.
It's true. Hello, darling. Come here. Incredible woman with a great husband, a man that loved Israel. What he did is he fought for Israel. That's all he really fought for. He just wanted to take care of. He just wanted to take care of Israel.
And these people do like Israel. This is our first Jewish president.
Well, of course, President Donald Trump is not actually Jewish, but that didn't stop Mark Levin from claiming that, and Donald Trump nodding along with that notion. Not that there's anything wrong with having a Jewish president, it's just that Trump isn't Jewish. But what I can say without a shadow of a doubt is that the president of the United States is for sale. And that's what President Trump has literally been bragging about in various White House events. And the event that took place just yesterday, the Hanukkah reception at the White House, was really no exception. So that whole event almost felt like our own president was trolling us, the American people, because what was very clear, what was kind of shown to us in plain sight, was that Donald Trump has a price. And if you're willing to pay that price, he will do anything for you. And if we're talking about moneyed interest domestically, obviously he's willing to play ball with them. But what's so nefarious about what we witnessed yesterday at this Hanukkah reception is that he is definitely for sale when it comes to foreign interests, even at the detriment of the American people. We're talking about a man who has already approved $14 billion in military funding for the nation state of Israel. Overall, we have spent $26 billion on foreign aid to Israel since October 7th, and the money continues flowing in. The new National Defense Authorization Act has a provision in there that gives Israel even more money. And remember, we're talking about a country that has committed war crimes, atrocities, annexation of land belonging to countries that are supposed to be sovereign, that should be able to defend themselves. But what we're seeing here is a lopsided situation in which the president of the United States consistently shows us that he will prioritize both corporate interests and foreign interests over the best interests of the American people. So not only did he agree that he's the country's first Jewish president, Trump also criticized Congress for not being loyal enough to Israel. Take a look.
My father would tell me the most powerful lobby that there is in this country is the Jewish lobby. It's the Israeli lobby. It's not that way anymore. You have a lot of people in your way. You have a lot of people that don't want to help Israel. You have a lot of people in Congress that don't like Israel. You have a lot of people in Congress that, in a way, I think, Mike, we could say it, right? You're there, you're doing an amazing job, Mike Lawler. They hate Israel.
To say that Congress, or at least a growing number of politicians within Congress, hate Israel and aren't sufficiently loyal enough to Israel is ridiculous to me. And to say that the Israel lobby. It's not a Jewish lobby. It's the Israel lobby, which has Christian Zionists involved. To say that they are not as powerful as they once were is insane when you consider the fact that we have, on multiple occasions now, vetoed UN Security Council resolutions that would rein in the terror, barbarism, and atrocities that the Israeli government is carrying out. Our relationship and alliance with Israel has not only alienated us from some of our long-term allies, but it has made us a pariah in the global stage, along with, of course, the country that's committing the atrocities that we're talking about here. So, I mean, how much more money does Congress need to appropriate for Israel's atrocities, for President Donald Trump to be satisfied with the loyalty that our government, the government of the United States, is showing to the government of Israel? So let's get into some specific numbers, because despite a little more criticism toward Israel coming from various members of Congress, at the end of the day, their votes make it abundantly clear that they're willing to do Israel's bidding. And why is that? Why are they willing to do Israel's bidding, even knowing how unpopular it is to support Israel at this moment? Well, let's take a look at some of the Israel lobby funding here. This is from Open Secrets, and it's showing the money that was spent by the Israel lobby between 2023 and 2024. As you can see here, AIPAC spent nearly $43.5 million on bribing both Democrats and Republicans in a single year. Then you have J Street, which is also part of the Israel lobby. They spent close to $6.7 million. The Republican Jewish Coalition spent $5.6 million. You have NORPAC, which I wasn't even familiar with. They spent in a single year $1.65 million on lobbying our politicians to do the bidding of the nation state of Israel. And the Democratic Majority for Israel is another one. They spent $1.63 million on bribing our politicians. Now, during this Hanukkah reception, Trump invited Mark Levin and his wife, by the way, to the stage. And this very sweet moment unfolded. Take a look.
And these people do like Israel.
Hold on. And he loves Israel too.
That's true.
2 seconds. Just 2 seconds. 6 years ago, I was up here, and I said, "This is our first Jewish president." Now he's the first Jewish president to serve two not consecutive presidencies. We thank you for everything.
I can't help myself. We got to cue up that video again, because one of my favorite moments was Mark Levin's wife doing a slow, uncomfortable clap after Trump is referred to as the first Jewish president. Let's take a quick look at that again.
And these people do like Israel.
Hold on. And he loves Israel too.
That's true.
2 seconds. Just 2 seconds. 6 years ago, I was up here, and I said, "This is our first Jewish president." Now he's the first Jewish president to serve two not consecutive presidencies. We thank you for everything.
I love that video because it shows you that the very people who are actually in control of US foreign policy don't really care who the puppet is. They can literally loathe the puppet. In this case, it doesn't really seem like Mark Levin's wife has much adoration or admiration toward President Donald Trump. But nonetheless, he can be bought. And that's really the only thing that matters. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to the American people that they put their trust and faith behind this president, who claimed he actually cared about our economic concerns, who claimed that he was never going to start any new wars. He's currently starting one right now as we speak with Venezuela. It's embarrassing to watch who is supposed to be the most powerful man, not just in this country, but in the world, get dog walked on a regular basis. It's not fair to the American people. And our system is so corrupt that foreign interests tend to reign supreme as long as they're willing to pay the price, as long as they're willing to bribe our politicians, including the president of the United States. It's disgusting. And if there's ever any question about the power and influence of the Israel lobby. Get a load of this moment with Trump's Zionist donor, Miriam Adelson.
Now I met Alan Dershowitz, and he said the legal thing about 4 more years. And I said, Alan, I agree with you. So we can do it. Think about it.
Thank you.
Maybe I will be the first one who told you, or second. Yeah.
She said, think about it. I'll give you another 250.
I will give.
But her husband, Sheldon, was an amazing guy. And he'd come up to the office, and there was nobody more aggressive than Sheldon. I think I spent more time with him and you, because you usually came up together. But he'd call and say, can I come over, please? I say, Sheldon, I'm president of the United States. It doesn't work that way anymore. It's like maybe tomorrow. How about tomorrow? No, please, just for a little while. And he'd always say 10 minutes. It turned out to be about an hour and a half, right? And what he did is he fought for Israel. That's all he really fought for. He just wanted to take care of Israel. So he was a great guy. He was a fantastic man, and he loved you so much he couldn't see straight.
So Alan Dershowitz and Miriam Adelson had a cute little conversation prior to this moment that we all witnessed, in which Alan, I guess, was trying to make the case that Trump should, I guess, subvert our Constitution and run for another term, and persuaded Miriam Adelson that it can be done. Miriam Adelson gets on that stage, encourages him to do it, and commits to offering another $250 million in bribes. Now, does she want to do that on behalf of all of us to make this country better? Clearly, no, that's not the case. She wants that money to go to the country she actually gives a damn about, and that's the country of Israel. So for people who are wondering, the rise of anti-Semitism, where's it coming from? When people are struggling in America and our political elite basically give us the middle finger while praising the very people who bought them like prostitutes, yeah, that leads to, unfortunately, anti-Semitism, which is misplaced anger and rage at the wrong people. The real anger and rage should be toward our broken political system, which has legalized bribery to a point where foreign countries can buy our president. The ire should be directed toward the corrupt lawmakers and the president and the administration. And nothing is gonna change. I can come on the show every day and bitch about this. I can tweet about it. We can all whine and cry about it. But if we're serious about what needs to be done to reform our political system, we have to be willing to work with people who have identified this very real threat to our way of life and to the future of this country. Because there is no reason for us to be sending tens of billions of dollars to a country that has been committing a genocide, number one, that's literally using our money to commit war crimes. And even if that weren't the case, I'm not interested in funding any war right now when we are $38 trillion in debt and spending $1 trillion a year on servicing that debt. It's that simple. Trump is rubbing it in our faces. And the fact that people are okay with it blows my mind. Our infrastructure is crumbling. People are living in poverty. We have a severe housing crisis. The cost of food has gone up significantly. It's just outrageous. So yeah, I understand the rage. But to react to these moments with anti-Semitism, that's wrong. To feel rage toward our political system and the corruption that's baked within it, I think that's where the ire should be directed at. Anyway, let's move on to some other news because I want to talk a little bit about the latest developments with Venezuela.
Members of Congress were briefed yesterday that a war is coming, and it'll be announced in the address to the nation tonight at 9 o'clock by the president. Who knows, by the way, if that will actually happen? I don't know. And I never want to overstate what I know, which is pretty limited in general. But a member of Congress told me that this morning.
War with Venezuela is imminent, according to Tucker Carlson, who made that statement on Judge Andrew Napolitano's show this morning. But Tucker's comments aren't the only indication that the United States is headed for more war. In fact, just yesterday, President Donald Trump announced on Truth Social that he is implementing a complete blockade of oil tankers going in and out of Venezuela. I'm going to give you some excerpts of what he wrote. He says that Venezuela is completely surrounded by the largest armada ever assembled in the history of South America. It will not only get bigger, and the shock to them will be like nothing they have ever seen before until such time as they return to the United States of America all of the oil, land, and other assets that they previously stole from us. So they need to return the oil that they stole from us. They didn't steal any oil from us. That's a complete lie. Venezuela is an oil-rich country. They didn't steal anything. Obviously, Trump is just throwing anything he can at the wall to justify a ridiculous war that we should not be involved in. Now, he also writes that the illegitimate Maduro regime is using oil from these stolen oil fields to finance themselves drug terrorism, human trafficking, murder, and kidnapping. Can we just pause for a second? We are aiding and abetting a genocide in the Middle East right now. That's what we're funding. I don't think Trump has an ounce of morality, and he certainly lives in a house made of glass and should not be throwing stones about what other countries are up to when we have been funding terrorist groups in the Middle East. We certainly did that in Syria recently. When we're providing the weapons that have been dropped on the homes, the schools, the hospitals, refugee camps of the Palestinian people. We're aiding and abetting Israel as they're empowering settlers, as they steal homes from Palestinians in the West Bank. Like, what are you even talking about? You want to talk about criminality? Why don't we take a look at what we, as the United States, aid and abet on a daily basis? But let me continue with the rest of what he had to say. For the theft of our assets and many other reasons, including terrorism, drug smuggling, and human trafficking, the Venezuelan regime has been designated a foreign terrorist organization. I was led to believe that Trump was totally okay with human trafficking. I mean, he was looking out for his buddy Epstein, engaging in the cover-up of the Epstein files. All of a sudden, Trump is worried about human trafficking. And of course, he's throwing anything he can at the wall to justify what's about to happen, according to Tucker Carlson. Nonetheless, his conclusion was to announce that he is ordering a total and complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers going into and out of Venezuela. So let me just be clear that Trump might be surrounded by morons, but not everyone surrounding him is a moron. In fact, his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, is actually a pretty smart and strategic woman. Now, I feel that she enables Trump's worst tendencies. But with that being said, during a recent interview with Vanity Fair, which was just published yesterday, she said, quote, he wants to keep on blowing boats up until Maduro cries uncle. Meaning this isn't about drug smuggling. This isn't about human trafficking. This isn't about, Trump's personal morality and wanting to hold Maduro accountable. This is about regime change. He wants Maduro gone. In Trump's first term, he tried on 2 separate occasions to overthrow Maduro and install some guy named Juan Guaido, this dopey dude that no one had any interest in. He failed in his first term, but now he is using our resources. And when I say our resources, I'm talking about a country that's drowning in $38 trillion in debt to essentially carry out a regime change war because he's interested in the oil too. That's the other part of this. That's a huge part of this. So last week, the Trump administration illegally seized a Venezuelan oil tanker. We covered that on this show. Well, his announcement on Truth Social makes it clear that he plans to do a lot more of that. And the intention to stop Venezuela from being able to export oil, their main export, it's all meant to destroy their economy. And the people who really suffer in the end are normal, everyday civilians in Venezuela who didn't ask for any of this, who didn't do anything wrong. But Trump doesn't care about them. He cares about them as much as he cares about the Palestinian lives that have been slaughtered by our special allies. So let me give you the details on that. Back in 2019, there was a study published in the Center for Economic and Policy Research. The authors were Mark Weisbrot and Jeffrey Sachs. By the way, Jeffrey Sachs is just a treasure. So if you come across one of his interviews on YouTube or anywhere else, please watch because he's very knowledgeable about world events, wars, things like that. And he's just a wonderful person. But with that in mind, his 2019 study looked into the impact of economic sanctions, specifically on Venezuela. And here's what they found. It is important to emphasize that nearly all of the foreign exchange that is needed to import medicine, food, medical equipment, spare parts, and equipment needed for electricity generation, water systems, or transportation is received by the Venezuelan economy through the government's revenue from the export of oil. In fact, let me pause for a second and say that Venezuela, its leaders at least, did not make great decisions when it comes to their economy because they stopped manufacturing things, kind of like us, but even worse on their end. And basically, they import much of what they need. The only real thing they export is oil. So when they were in a very severe inflationary period, it was due to the fact that oil prices dropped significantly and they had no choice but to import things because they're not manufacturing or making anything in Venezuela. You know, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not by much. And so I don't want to make this appear as though I'm defending what's happening in Venezuela. The point that I am trying to make is that we really have no business going to war with them. They are not a national security threat to the United States at all. You can have two thoughts in your mind at the same time. You can be against Nicolas Maduro, you can be against their system of government, whatever you think, I don't really care. But you could also be against going to war and risking the lives of our soldiers with Venezuela. Anyway, the study concludes that thus, any sanctions that reduce export earnings and therefore government revenue thereby reduce the imports of these essential and, in many cases, life-saving goods. But that's the point. That's what Trump is trying to do. He doesn't just want Maduro to cry uncle. Oftentimes, when the federal government implements these types of sanctions, it's meant to maybe spark an uprising, unrest within the populace in Venezuela. Now, Trump also loves to say the quiet part out loud. And if you pay close attention to him, you can recall that back in June of 2023, he said this.
How about we're buying oil from Venezuela? When I left, Venezuela was ready to collapse. We would have taken it over. We would have gotten all that oil. It would have been right next door. But now we're buying oil from Venezuela, so we're making a dictator very rich. Can you believe this?
So in the summer of 2023, he talks about how we shouldn't be buying oil from Venezuela. We should just take it. We should just take it. Gives you a sense of what his real motives are. And then a little less than a year later, Politico wrote a piece about his April fundraising meeting with oil company executives. And here's what they wrote. Trump asked oil industry executives last month to donate $1 billion to aid his campaign to retake the White House. And what did they get in return? Well, the oil industry executives had some specific asks. They wanted to end the Biden administration's pause on new natural gas export permits. Mission accomplished. Expansion on the number of offshore drilling lease sales in the Gulf of Mexico. Mission accomplished. Trump also promised to slash the Biden administration's tax credits for EVs. Mission accomplished. But clearly that wasn't all they asked for. And $1 billion is a lot of money. So Trump wants that oil. He wants regime change. It has nothing to do about solving the very real problems we're dealing with in this country as it pertains to drug trafficking and addiction. And fentanyl and meth are the two top targets that I wish our federal government was focusing on, but they're not. Finally, I want to end on a speech that Congressman Thomas Massie gave on the House floor. Let's take a look.
If the president believes military action against Venezuela is justified and needed, he should make the case and Congress should vote before American lives and treasure are spent on regime change in South America. Let's be honest about likely outcomes. Do we truly believe that Nicolas Maduro will be replaced by a modern-day George Washington? How did that work out? In Cuba, Libya, Iraq, or Syria. Previous presidents told us to go to war over WMDs, weapons of mass destruction that did not exist. Now it's the same playbook, except we're told that drugs are the WMDs. If it were about drugs, we'd bomb Mexico or China or Colombia, and the president would not have pardoned Juan Orlando Hernandez. This is about oil and regime change.
He's absolutely right. And while the oil companies that stand to benefit from this war will certainly privatize their gains, they are planning to, socialize the losses. And the losses in this case could potentially be the loss of literal American soldiers, human lives. It's wrong. And I'm happy to see a growing number of Republicans speaking out against it, because it's all a scam. It's not about helping us. It's not about solving some of our very real issues. It's about helping oil companies and overthrowing a leader that our government doesn't like. I think we've had enough of that. Let's take a break. When we come back, Candace Owens had an interview on Piers Morgan's show today. He asked her some tough questions. Let's see how she did. What's up, everyone? Welcome to our social break. I know a dragon in our member section says Jewish because he loves Israel. So loving Israel makes you Jewish. Got it. Yeah, it's just Judaism is like a system of faith. Like you can't just, I don't know, man. It's like throw it around and like label people with it because they're helping a foreign country. Like it's, I don't know. I feel like if I were Jewish, I would be insulted by that. It sure seemed like Mark Levin's wife seemed a little bit insulted by that. Anyway, Eclectic Miscellanea says, if there was any justice, Bernie Sanders would have been our first Jewish president. I know. I mean, look, even if you don't agree with his policies, which I agreed with many of his policies, you can tell that we're talking about someone who actually gave a damn about this country. And it seems like leaders like that are few and far between these days. Jack Callahan says, you have to wonder, what does Mossad have on most of our politicians? We can speculate, that's for sure. Let's move over to our Twitch community where No Math Dragon says, Trump isn't Christian, he isn't Jewish, he's for sale. Absolutely. And Green New Dealer Dragon says, when Mark Levin says Jewish, he means Israel's bitch. That is actually exactly right. Thank you to CD Norse Dog Dad 5119 who gifted 5 TYT memberships. That's freaking awesome. Thank you for the support. We have Stephanie F 2027 who says, happy Wednesday and good evening. Merry Christmas. It's 1 week away, comrades. It is. I'm actually looking forward to the holidays this year, or at least Christmas. Christina Lisa Brown says, Anna looks beautiful. Hair is litty. Thank you. Michael Catalano says, I know it's a bit into the weeds economically, but you guys should really do a story on Blue Owl refusing to finance another data center for Oracle. Ooh, we actually do have a data center story that we're going to cover, hopefully, if we don't run out of time later today. So stick around for that. But we don't have the Blue Owl angle. Maybe we'll look into that for a future story. But those data centers are already harming communities across the country. I mean, it's taking up a lot of water, a lot of energy. And you want to know who's doing a lot of the lobbying to get data centers into various municipalities across the country? Former Democratic Senator Kyrsten Sinema. She's just awful. Okay, let's go to Marty Mule, 1962. Anna, great job on the show. Her take, I love how you and Lindy Lee could have a disagreement on a certain take, but are able to debate it and allowed to hear both sides, find out what you have in common. We do get heated sometimes, but I personally love debate. And for me, as long as we're two consenting adults and can be kind to each other after the fact and just not hold it against each other, I want to engage in those kinds of conversations. All right, we got to get back to the show. I'll read more of your comments later. Welcome back to the show. I'm Anna Kasparian, and I want to tell you guys about a wonderful company that we partnered up with, and that is Mobile Noble. It is definitely a more affordable way to basically have a cell phone service that literally pays you back for unused data. And if you want to learn more and you want to switch, all you have to do is go to tyt.com/switch. That's tyt.com/switch. The only mobile plan that pays you to use your phone less. So again, you can learn more by going to tyt.com/switch. All right, let's get to our next story. There's been a lot of drama surrounding Candace Owens, Erica Kirk, Charlie Kirk's assassination. I'm not surprised. And in fact, I feel a lot of sympathy toward those who are not very pleased with the FBI under the leadership of Kash Patel. And I think his incompetence is now leading to a lot of people just questioning any investigation, whether it's the investigation into the assassination attempts against Donald Trump. I mean, there was just a shooting at Brown University. There hasn't been a suspect arrested yet, which is insane. And Kash Patel just yesterday, knowing that we don't even have a suspect in custody, decided to go on Stephen Miller's wife's podcast to talk about his relationship with his girlfriend. Both of them were on there. It's insane. So all this stuff, I think, plays a role in kind of the hysteria that we're seeing surrounding the investigation of Charlie Kirk's assassination. So with that in mind, let's get to the story.
I believe that there are people at Turning Point who are engaged in covering up what happened on that day.
But were any of them engaged in the planning of the murder of Charlie Kirk?
I wouldn't know how it was planned. Absolutely, I can't make that. I cannot confidently make that statement. I can say confidently that I know they're engaged in the cover-up.
Candace Owens had an hour-long interview with Piers Morgan, which was published just today. And the whole topic of conversation had to do with various conspiracy theories surrounding the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Now, this sit-down interview came about a day after Candace Owens met with Erica Kirk in private. We don't know and are not privy to the specific details of the discussion other than what Candace Owens has disclosed publicly. And she did get into a few details in the context of this Piers Morgan interview. But the real question is, after that meeting with Erica Kirk, was she persuaded that Tyler Robinson is in fact the individual who pulled the trigger and killed Charlie Kirk? Is she gonna continue her sleuthing and her investigation? Is she doing this to make money? All of those themes and topics were explored in the context of this interview. Let's watch.
I said, I'm happy to keep my mouth shut. And I want to feel good walking out of here that there is something there. There is some sort of a smoking gun. And I will tell viewers just to be patient. And so they did call one of the lawyers working on this case, and it was not convincing at all. He said, in effect, all we have is what the public has seen. And we won't know more because we're investigating and looking for more. They don't have a video of him taking the shot, which I think was something that I assumed, like, okay, there's all these cameras. Maybe they actually have that video and they're waiting for a moment to release that to the public. They don't have that.
Do you believe as a consequence of your 4.5 hours with Erica, do you believe that it is now most likely that Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk?
Absolutely not. I haven't seen one piece of compelling evidence that Tyler Robinson scaled the rooftops like Spider-Man on a college campus that he didn't go to and fired one shot, a magic bullet shot, and killed Charlie Kirk. I have not seen one piece of compelling evidence. In fact, I've seen more compelling evidence to the contrary.
So a lot has been made about the way Charlie Kirk was shot, at least as is described by the official narrative. I'm uncomfortable commenting on that because I'm not an expert, and based on the experts that I've heard talk about, the angle in which he was shot from, the weapon that was used, whether or not that type of round can hit Charlie Kirk's neck without an exit wound. There have been experts who have argued on both sides of this specific issue. So I feel uncomfortable commenting on that at this point, okay? I'm not a weapons expert. I'm not a ballistics expert. However, there are some questions. Like, do you guys remember the first person that we all thought was the suspect? I forget the name of the guy, but the older gentleman who seems to be on the scene when all these traumatic things happen. He was the one saying that he did it. And then later, when he was pulled in for questioning, he told the police that he did it specifically to allow the perpetrator to get away. What was that? Like, why would he do that? Why would that guy literally put his life on the line, risk his life to claim that he committed an assassination he didn't commit? Like, I want more clarity on that. So she says, I met with Erica Kirk. I didn't see anything, any piece of evidence from them. And remember, they're meeting privately. And Candace Owens has said on her show, if anything was presented to me in that private meeting that would jeopardize the investigation and the case, I would not talk about it publicly. And I do think she really wants to find who killed Charlie Kirk. I do think that's what's motivating her. However, she claims they didn't share anything with me that was convincing. And in fact, she claims when I asked them, what do you have? They allegedly, this is what she's saying, we weren't in the meeting, but she alleges they have really no information outside of what the public already knows. Now, she could be lying, or they might be lying to her if they did in fact say that in the context of the meeting. We just don't know. But what I personally want is more clarity on what her theory is. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, if at the time when I was watching her show to try to figure out like what is she actually saying, it was the most confusing thing in the world because there's so many different threads that she's pulling at and they don't seem to really be connected. There's the Egyptian planes allegedly following Erica Kirk around. Then there's this stuff about the DuPonts. Then there's this stuff about Pierre. And then there's another Pierre. I just had a hard time following along and figuring out, okay, what is your theory here? So luckily she was asked about that. And she seems to think that Tyler Robinson is very likely involved. But she was asked whether or not, she thinks he's the only one involved, or if there's more to it than that. So she's gonna kind of shed some light on what she's thinking in this next clip.
I think the communication should be, we are hopeful that throughout this investigation, we are gonna uncover more evidence that links Tyler Robinson to this crime. I do feel confident that he was involved in some capacity on that day. As I have said many times on my show, I was the one who broke the story that he was at the Dairy Queen throwing out clothes, a local Dairy Queen throwing out clothes in a nearby cemetery. And so I do think he was involved and multiple people were involved that day. And I think he did pick up clothes. I had communication with Lance's family. I had communication with Tyler Robinson's family. And for some reason, Lance is being protected, which I find to be very strange. His own family thinks he's guilty of more. And they find it weird that the feds kind of glossed over him, almost as though he was a Fed operative, like he was working on behalf of them.
Look, at the tail end of that, I think she makes a good point, right? How is it that Lance isn't considered a suspect? Is it just because of that text exchange? How do we not know whether or not Tyler Robinson engaged in that text exchange specifically to ensure that, Lance isn't seen as someone who conspired along with Tyler Robinson to carry out this assassination? I don't know. I just think and look, there could be a more thorough investigation happening behind the scenes that we're just not privy to. But there's really no mention of the alleged transgender lover of Tyler Robinson. No mention of what happened with this person. I mean, and that's supposed to be the person that motivated Tyler Robinson to assassinate Charlie Kirk due to his views on transgender issues. But again, we're not hearing anything about Lance anymore. But, to be fair, Kash Patel is very busy appearing on podcasts to talk about how much he loves his girlfriend. Again, we do not have a suspect in custody in regard to the shooting that just happened at Brown University, which I think is crazy. I mean, people should be furious about that. There was someone in custody, but they released that individual and cleared whoever that was of wrongdoing. Anyway, let's keep going. So Candace Owens does not believe that anyone at Turning Point USA pulled the trigger and killed Charlie Kirk. And that's important to say because I do think that the way she's kind of talked about this story really has like a lot of innuendo that seems to imply that there are people within the Turning Point community who might have carried this out. Now, while she doesn't blame anyone or think anyone at Turning Point USA pulled the trigger, she is suspicious of something related to Turning Point USA. And she talks about that in this next clip.
Do you think anybody at Turning Point, did anybody at Turning Point, in your opinion, know that Charlie Kirk was going to be murdered?
There is specifically 2 people at Turning Point USA, and I have communicated that information to Erica and Justin Strife, that I would not be surprised if they had foreknowledge of Charlie Kirk being assassinated.
But do you have any evidence?
I'm not going to name. I am not going to name those people, okay? Because it's not right for me to name those people until I know for a fact that they did.
Did you give the names Did you give the names to Erica?
Yes,
so
I absolutely did.
You gave the names to Erica of 2 employees, current employees at Turning Point, who you believe were involved in the preparation for the murder of Charlie Kirk. Is that what you're saying?
I told them that if I were in your shoes, these would be 2 employees that I would look further into.
And what evidence do you have that they had any prior knowledge of the murder?
Because I don't have concrete evidence is the reason why I'm not naming them. So I've been responsible.
You've got no evidence,
not saying,
but you're telling the widow that these 2 people may have been involved in the murder.
So I think the biggest issue with what Candace is doing, and I want to be clear, I don't have problems with people wanting to do their own investigation and look into things. I think our government is incompetent. There is distrust toward our institutions for good reason. So I am not at all saying that she has no right to ask questions. But I do think the problem with the way Candace Owens is carrying this out is it's fine to suspect that 2 individuals in particular might have had foreknowledge. But if I were in her shoes, what I would do is keep that close to my chest until I have something substantive to point to, a piece of evidence that actually justifies me incriminating the organization. Because that is what she's doing. She might not be naming names, but at the same time, she is implying here that Turning Point USA is engaged in a cover-up of who actually assassinated Charlie Kirk. And you're entering dangerous territory there when you don't have the hard evidence to prove it. So again, you can have those suspicions, but I would just personally keep it close to my chest until I have some receipts. Now, I also don't blame her for being angry or suspicious of Turning Point USA because of the fact that the organization immediately after Charlie Kirk's assassination seemed to be dishonest about some things, namely Charlie Kirk's own political evolution as it pertains to US support for Israel. And they also were not upfront about what he was experiencing with the pro-Israel donors to Turning Point USA in the months leading up to his assassination. They seem to want to brush that under the rug entirely. And in fact, the biggest issue I had with Erica Kirk's handling of the interview with Barry Weiss is that she totally simplified Charlie Kirk's identity and his views on Israel, because his views on Israel were a lot more nuanced than he loved Israel. You know what I'm saying? He was having some issues with the fact that we were getting dragged into war with Iran, for instance. He was having issues with, some of the way that Israel was carrying out he certainly saw it as a war in Gaza. I mean, he was certainly more supportive of Israel than I am. That's very clear. But to say that he was just, blanket, I love Israel, they're doing nothing wrong, that's just not true. So when you know Charlie Kirk as closely as Candace did, and you know that Charlie Kirk was having these issues with Israel and the Israel lobby, and you see Turning Point USA kind of like cover that up, yeah, you're going to be suspicious of them. And I don't begrudge her for feeling that way. But outside of that, if you don't have evidence, hard evidence, that individuals within Turning Point USA engaged in a cover up, maybe don't mention that until you have the hard evidence. Just even implying that that might be the case, I think is dangerous and puts a target on people's backs. So the final video I'll go to is her comments on Israel, because she was asked if she believes that Israel was involved.
Israel, I got tons of questions about. Yeah, I think Israel is a very good place to start when Bibi Netanyahu is just denying and just way too involved in the beginning. That was weird. Everyone felt it was weird, and they were right to feel that it was weird. And when Bibi admits that he called him 2 weeks before and invited him to Israel, like, what's that about? People are being, and also because it just happens to be that from the very beginning, Zionists don't want us investigating the Charlie Kirk assassination. So it's just, I would say, the usual suspect.
I mean, what she said at the tail end of that clip is absolutely true. Don't you guys find it weird that the ardent defenders of Israel in this country tend to want to avoid the release of the Epstein files? Like, I literally found myself in a 2v1 debate with that Josh Hammer guy and Alan Dershowitz, in which both of them very clearly do not want to shed light on the Epstein files. Now, Alan Dershowitz pretends like he wants them released, but specifically because he wants to smear the very women who accused Jeffrey Epstein of exploiting them and abusing them. But yeah, I mean, I think the behavior that you see from the Israeli government immediately after some tragic event takes place here in the United States makes them seem suspicious. I mean, you can't deny that. Okay, and look, it could just be Benjamin Netanyahu being the depraved goon that he is, using tragedy for his own political purposes, because the first thing he did was go on a media tour in which he started blaming radical Islamists and leftists for the assassination of Charlie Kirk before we even had a suspect in custody. So again, it might just be a depraved, disgusting, genocidal foreign leader using these traumatic events, these horrible, tragic events for his own political benefit. But don't get upset when people start looking at Israel and like, was it Israel involved? Why is their government getting so involved in commenting on this? It's crazy. So again, I don't begrudge her for wanting more information. I want more information, but I do think there's a way to do this where you're keeping in mind that engaging in a witch hunt or pointing fingers or implying that people have engaged in wrongdoing when you don't have any evidence of that, that's a dangerous thing to do. So I hope she's a little more careful moving forward. It seems like she's not going to drop the issue, even though a lot of her fans were raging against her yesterday because they thought that Erica Kirk maybe talked to her and convinced her not to look into this. But her audience wants her to look into this. And I think she is going to continue looking into this. The question is she going to change the way she does it? And we're just going to have to wait and see. We'll be right back. So guys, super producer Kate, she just sent me another example of Israel using a tragedy or using something terrible to push their own political narrative. And that makes them look suspicious. Like if they want to stop being at the center of conspiracy theories, maybe shut up and don't use global tragedies to push some BS narrative to drag us into war with Iran. And that's exactly what happened with this story. So I'm not too familiar with it, but apparently, according to the Jerusalem Post, Israel examining possibility Iran involved in murder of nuclear scientist in the United States. Oh, what? There's no evidence of that at all. But they're going to do it anyway because they'll do anything to convince our government that we need to go to war with Iran, not for our own benefit, for their benefit. I mean, of course, they're trying to persuade our government that Iran is a threat to us. which I think the real threat to us is Israel, actually. But anyway, let's get to your comments. I didn't have time to read super chats earlier, so I'll read them now. Dav Mill says, under Edward I or Edward I, obliged every man according to his estate and degree to provide a determinate quantity of such arms as were then in use in order to keep the peace. Signed, Blackstone. Dav also says, I get to watch live once a week, sometimes twice. The right of the citizens to keep and bear arms has justly been considered the palladium of the liberties of a republic. Supreme Court Justice Joseph Story, 1833. I didn't get to respond about the shootings in gun-free zones. Australia has very, very strict gun laws, and that didn't stop a terrorist from arming himself with 6 firearms, which were used in the massacre that took place on Bondi Beach. My views on gun control have changed a little bit, as you guys can probably gather. It doesn't mean I'm not in favor of some gun control. I do think that we need to bolster federal background checks, but I've never been in favor of banning guns, but I've moved a little more, I don't know if you want to consider it, to the right on this issue. There's plenty of people on the left, by the way, who also want to protect the Second Amendment. They're just not the ones that are ever, in the media talking about it. Anyway, stonks. And by the way, the other thing is seeing the videos of Gazans in the West Bank just be brutalized by Israeli settlers and they have no way of defending themselves. I just feel like things would be different if they had a way of defending themselves. Anyway, stonks versus stocks, 9278. Kirk's death definitely has some suspicious activities for sure, but it's important to be careful on how you report on them. I agree with you. That is such a perfect, concise way of describing exactly how I feel about this issue. Anyway, let's get back to the show. Welcome back to TYT, everyone. I'm Annie Kasparian, and I wanted to move on to a completely different story. I wanted to talk about an investigative report that I actually published recently after working on it for months. But I think it's important for you all to know about, because oftentimes when I talk about my ire toward Gavin Newsom, some people think it's like weird or misdirected or based on nothing. But it's based on a lot of substantive issues that we have in the state of California under his leadership. And so let's talk about it. California Governor Gavin Newsom very clearly intends to run for the Democratic ticket in 2028. He wants to be president, and honestly, he hasn't really been trying to hide it. And as I think about what he will likely run on, it's very likely that he is going to point to his signature homeless housing policy as what will be a national model for solving the very real problem of homelessness in the United States. And if anyone is enticed by his campaigning on that, you should know that that signature policy, known as Project Homekey, has been riddled with fraud, scathing audits, and at this point, 2 criminal federal indictments. So the piece that I published is titled Newsom's National Model for Homeless, Racked by Fraud. It's published for Real Clear Investigations. There's original reporting in there. This is actual journalism. It's not just me commenting. In fact, I'm not allowed to share my opinion at all. And so this is work that really fulfills me, even though it's really hard to do original reporting. I now understand for the first time in my life why it takes journalists sometimes months to work on a story and publish a story. But with that in mind, I want to share the details of what I've learned and why we need to hold members of our own party accountable when they're engaged in wrongdoing, when they're engaged in policies that actually end up stealing money from taxpayers while simultaneously making the problem that they're supposedly trying to fix a lot worse. So Project Homekey began under the name Project Roomkey at the start of the COVID pandemic. And at the start of the COVID pandemic, it made a lot of sense because the idea was we have a massive homeless population in California. Many of them are living in tightly packed shelters or tent encampments. And we're dealing with a highly contagious virus. We're telling our citizens to shelter in place. We need to do something to protect people who don't have homes. And so what they started to do, the state started to use federal money that was provided through FEMA to rent out hotel and motel rooms on behalf of homeless people so they can shelter in place and not be in these tightly packed areas, right? Whether it be the shelters or the tent encampments. And I will be completely honest, I was 100% in favor of this. I thought it was wrong to just pretend like these people don't matter. We should find shelter for them. And that's what they did. Now, it was a very costly program. I don't want to lie about that, but many, including myself at the time, saw the program as worth it. So just to give you an example, in San Francisco, rooms were rented at $6,000 a month, which is nearly double the average cost of a one-bedroom apartment, at least at that time. So a few months into the program, Newsom decided that it would actually make a lot more sense to pivot from a temporary housing program to a permanent housing program. It would be part of this, housing first, permanent supportive housing policy that Democrats have really been championing in liberal parts of this country. Now, to do so, the state would provide grants to local governments like San Francisco or Los Angeles or Oakland, you get the picture, where they would take the grants and use the money to purchase excess hotel and motel buildings. Sounds like a good idea. And then what they would do, because there are state and federal laws mandating that they have to convert these units to provide kitchens and things like that. What they would do is they would then use grants in order to hire developers who would then convert these units into apartments for the homeless. Now, I remember talking about this on the show a long time ago, probably at the start of this program. It was when Karen Bass had mentioned that the state was doing this, and I thought it was a good idea. And obviously, the whole selling point was that this was going to be a more affordable way of increasing housing for the homeless, because we're talking about buildings that have already been built. New construction is a lot more expensive. But if you take the buildings that already exist and just convert them so they abide by state and federal laws and regulations, that's going to be cheaper. So let's do it that way. And I love that idea. I thought that was a great idea. But unfortunately, due to lack of oversight and due to the fact that this was really about a public-private partnership, a lot of fraud took place, and it's even led to criminal indictments. So on top of that, by the way, Project Homekey, which advertises itself as this effort at permanent supportive housing, supportive meaning it would provide mental health services to people in these units, did not actually allocate funding for the mental health programs. It was up to local governments to pay for that and to facilitate it in the way that they see fit. So when we talk about how much money has been spent on this program, so far there's been over, I believe it's close to $4 billion because more money has been spent or more grants have been given out since I published this piece, if you can believe it. But we're talking about around $4 billion spent. And during that time, homelessness has actually gone up. And when you think about the fact that mental illness or drug addiction is very prevalent among the homeless population, it is an issue that Project Homekey pretends like it provides permanent supportive housing, when in reality, up until now, they hadn't been funding the mental health care component of it. And that's a big problem. And that's a heavy lift for these local governments like LA, for instance. So just to give you some of the numbers, a 2023 UC San Francisco study found that 66% of California's homeless population suffers from mental illness. 12% reported experiencing hallucinations, and 31% reported regular use of methamphetamines, and 11% non-prescribed opioids. 16% reported heavy episodic drinking. So these are people who need a lot more than just a place to stay. They need additional services, and those additional services were not paid for through the Project Homekey program up until now. And I'll explain what changed recently. So what's really heartbreaking about this story as well is that some of the people who were struggling with addiction, who were placed in these apartments or these hotel rooms at the start of this program under Project Roomkey, they ended up overdosing, and there was no one there with them to, administer Narcan. And so I talked to some homeless service providers, one of them a former homeless service provider from Oakland, who said that this was a really big problem and hasn't really been addressed appropriately. In fact, drug overdose was the cause of death in 7 out of 8 cases at the Airtel Plaza Hotel in Van Nuys in just 1 year, from April 2020 through June of 2021. And then a former homeless service provider from Oakland who I spoke to said this. I thought this quote was telling. Think about how stupid it is to place an addict in a room alone where no one can administer Narcan. So these flaws existed within the Project Homekey program from the very beginning, and no one has really cared about fixing it, right? Because you can have a really good idea, but you're gonna run into issues and you have to recalibrate. The problem was, according to audits that were done on this program, there was no effort to recalibrate. In fact, there's been no tracking of whether or not these programs work to begin with. So Project Homekey, again, has cost the state more than $3.75 billion. So that's the exact figure. And in the 5 years that this program has been in place, homelessness has only gotten worse, which is a pretty clear sign that it's not working. So it's been in place since 2020. Homelessness in California has skyrocketed in the 5 years Homekey has been in place, growing by more than 20%, according to the Public Policy Institute of California. That's an increase of some 36,000 people between 2019 and 2024. And again, no one has bothered to track whether the program is working, whether people placed in housing saw their lives improve, or if they returned to the streets. The program's effectiveness is unclear, according to a critical 2024 state auditor's report. Now, let's focus on the city of Los Angeles a little bit, because I do think it's important to see that a lot of the money is also being wasted by overpaying for the very buildings that are being purchased. So in the city of LA, the Housing Authority used $48.9 million in Homekey money to acquire and complete a building that was under construction. Developer Haroni Investments was chosen to construct a 75,105 square foot building with 127 units. But if you do a comparative analysis, a similar project in the area would typically cost roughly $18.8 million, according to experts who spoke to local reporters. HACLAs, and that's basically the government agency that gives the grants, purchase price of $48.9 million represents a 165% profit at taxpayer expense. That's insane. That's just theft of taxpayer money. 71% of the units under the Project Homekey program in Los Angeles remain vacant because they're still unfinished, mostly. That's the main reason. But local government officials keep doing these ribbon cutting ceremonies where they pretend as though the units are ready to go. They completed the project, but the projects aren't completed. In August, city officials held a ribbon cutting ceremony, even though the building that I just talked about, that they really paid a premium for, was not yet finished as of December, meaning as of this month. The LA Housing Department's website says the building is not yet built and there are no listings available for units in the building. Homeless service provider Weingart Center Association used $27.3 million in Homekey grants to purchase a 76-unit senior living complex in LA, which it planned to convert into housing units with additional funding from the city. But federal prosecutors say that the deal was super shady and shrouded in secrecy. In fact, contracts related to the escrow of the building make that clear. So Stephen Taylor, the real estate developer who sold the property to Weingart Center, used fake bank statements to obtain loans and credit to buy the property for just $11.2 million. And that was months before he flipped it to the city for $16.1 million. Okay, and he didn't do anything to the building. There were no improvements, no renovations to the building. A contract clause ensured that his involvement would be kept secret. You want to know why? Because if the public knew about his involvement, they would see that he purchased the property for $11.2 million and then immediately flipped it at a markup at $16.1 million. By the way, Taylor is now facing federal criminal charges because of this. And then there's the other case involving Cody Holmes, the former CFO of developer Shangri-La Industries, allegedly falsified bank records to obtain $26 million in home key funds, only to siphon off more than $2 million to pay his own credit card bill. Now, was he facing criminal charges here in California? No, he wasn't. There was a civil lawsuit against Shangri-La, but why wasn't there a criminal case against him? That's what I want to know. Why did it take the feds getting involved to do this? Overall, HCD, that's the housing agency in Los Angeles, or California, I should say, awarded the Shangri-La a total of $117 million in grants for 7 housing projects. The only 2 projects that Shangri-La managed to complete amount to 174 homeless housing units, costing the state $672,000 a pop. The 5 that they never completed went into foreclosure because they were just using the money to pay off credit cards, apparently. So you might be wondering, okay, there's a lack of oversight. Maybe the state legislature should do something about that. And to be sure, they did. They voted unanimously on a bill that would enhance oversight of the Project Home Key program. And guess what? Gavin Newsom vetoed it. He said that the oversight would be redundant. It can't be redundant if there's no oversight to begin with. So when I say that Gavin Newsom is a target-rich environment, this is what I'm talking about. And if you want to beat the Republicans, if that's what you care about the most in the next election, be very careful about who you vote for. All right, we got to take a break. We'll be back with the second hour.
What contributions to the progressive cause are you most proud of? I mean, I don't have super high aspirations for a singular role that I can play in the movement or anything. I try to present myself as what I think that I am, which is a progressive man who is driven by a, I think, well-interrogated and well-organized system of values that I try to stay consistent on, and I demonstrate that that's the sort of life that a person can lead and be successful and be happy and all of that. And that should not need to be done, but there are so many people on the right that are trying to push men in the opposite direction that I want to be able to do that. Along the way, if I can get people to care about some topics that they wouldn't necessarily care about, or that for some men they might think that's not a topic that they should be focused on, that's definitely something that I relish doing. And along the way, I mean, we've been able to introduce people to a lot of candidates. That's been a big part of what we've done. Not all of them necessarily got in office. Probably most of them did not. And a lot of them you might not even remember their names. But it was great to be able to provide people the platform where they had the chance of making a difference. Obviously AOC and all that, but there's been a lot of great people along the way.
In the bonus episode for the members, we do some inside baseball. We're gonna look at John's desk. Nice little spaceship here. Nerd. But it is kind of look cool. Who has Legos? Oh no. He's taken apart a keyboard. Who has a mouse pad that's this big? He's got a dog with a nose that you can hang something on. You know what this desk screams to me? Nerd. And that's how we like him. We love Johnny Pie. He's got his own personality like everybody does at TYT. Come meet us all in the bonus episodes. TYT.com/team. David Soror, Nina Turner. Adam Green drop by.
Charlemagne.
Congressman, great to have you. It's great to be with you, Chuck.
Your show is a great thing. You're informing people. A lot of the shows that I live on, my CNN, my MSNBC, and even Fox, and any of the other shows, NPR, they are so quick to decide that they know what this building means today.
The one thing that I hate that politicians do, they talk about the people they should be talking to.
Do they have any idea that they're the establishment and that they're hated? Or do they not realize that at all?
People are so deeply in their little universe. I think it's very easy to not really question what you're doing.
Voters have a right to ask questions of any nominee, whether they're independent, Republican, or Democrat.
The system is duopoly that suppresses competition.
How is it the year 2024 and we're still like, maybe they'll talk about paid medical? Like, how is that like at one level, it's like, this is what we're talking about now. You're like, it's 2024.
And that's always been the critique, your critique of us is, well, you guys give good speeches, you put out good tweets, but you're not wielding actual power. Now we're starting to.
My favorite news platform by far. It's not even close.
It's about a country and a principle, and that's what you and I both worked to achieve. And I'm so glad that at least half the battle has now been won.
If you want to go really hear what's going on honestly, you should tune into the Young Turks.
Thanks for doing such a great job. Please keep it up. Hang tough.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy.
Oh, I like making you happy.
I didn't know about that.
This is a happy experience.
Awesome.
You're welcome, YouTube.
Join the Dragon Squad by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below or sign up on tyt.com/join to get access to fun emojis, a member-only chat, exclusive shop TYT designs, ad-free watching, and so many other amazing perks. Plus, you get bragging rights for being part of the coolest community on the internet and help us drive real, positive change in the world. The Dragon Squad awaits, so join today.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Young Turks. Cenk Ugran and Kasparian with you guys. Also Nick BF1991 and Canna Corso Mom 2023. Thank you for joining us. We really, really do appreciate it. It makes a big difference to us. The more Young Turks members there are, the stronger we are and the better ability we have to get out the truth and the real news to you guys. So hit the join button below or tyt.com/join. And I'm looking forward to all the stories we got in this second hour.
Well, I don't know if you're going to look forward to what the stories mean for the future of the country, because believe it or not, Trump is looking for a way to get corporate interests even deeper tax cuts. Let's get into it. Well, the Trump administration is scheming up a brand new way to give wildly profitable corporations even more tax cuts. Now, the Treasury Department plans to provide companies with a workaround that allows them to take full advantage of the research and development tax breaks that were baked into Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill. Before I give you the details, though, Cenk, your 2 cents?
Yeah, oh, thank God. Just what we needed, another corporate tax cut. This government's become a joke. It never represents us. All it does is represent foreign governments and corporate rule. And here they appear to be violating a massive international agreement, and they're going to cheat on behalf of their corporate donors. It's disgusting, and I think it'll lead to the destruction of Trump's second term in office. So let's give you the facts, and then I'll tell you why.
And keep in mind the idea that Trump would seek to further minimize revenue coming into the federal government at a time when spending has increased, just as it did in his first term, and we're drowning in $38 trillion in debt is insane. Now, this effort hasn't been officially announced yet. However, reporters at Bloomberg are on the beat, and people familiar with the matter say that it's likely to come soon. So at issue is that, that super pesky corporate minimum tax that was implemented during the Biden administration. So if you're unfamiliar with it, mandatory minimum tax is basically mandating that firms with more than $1 billion in annual profits, not revenue, profits, pay at least a 15% tax on the earnings that they report to their investors. Now, as Bloomberg says, the corporate tax or the corporate minimum tax has vexed major corporations and their Washington lobbyists for months. They're vexed. And here's the issue. Here's why they're vexed. Now, many tech, pharmaceutical, and manufacturing companies are upset because of the fact that Trump's tax bill allows companies to claim retroactive research and development deductions, which is insane, estimated to be worth $67 billion. But that change was so generous that it would trigger the 15% minimum tax for a wide swath of companies. So I'll give you examples. Airbnb, Boardroom, and Applied Materials are among companies that have disclosed in regulatory filings that their supersized deduction could trigger the 15% corporate alternative minimum tax or prevent them from claiming hundreds of millions of dollars in tax credits related to past payment of the minimum tax. So the Trump administration is essentially coming out to save the day with, save the day for their corporate buddies in some workaround that they're going to announce relatively soon. So they're creating a carve out that will allow these companies to take full advantage of the R&D tax breaks, the research and development tax breaks. And what exactly that policy will look like has not been clarified in detail yet. But the reporting does suggest that it would allow companies to use the R&D expense deductions to lower adjusted financial statement income when determining the corporate alternative minimum tax. Now, Democrats are pretending like they're upset about this. And I do say pretending because usually it's like, oh, we wag our fingers, but do they ever really put up a real fight? So a group of Democrats in a letter, they love letters, in a letter to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, attacked the possibility of such a change, writing, quote, "We urge Treasury not to further rig the tax code in favor of billionaire corporations." Now, it seems unlikely that their strongly worded letter is really going to do anything. But even without this additional carve out, corporations are already saving billions of dollars in taxes thanks to the Republican bill, and the federal budget is really taking a hit as a result of that. So between July and November, the last full month of data, revenue from the corporate income tax has dropped by roughly a third, or $52 billion, compared to the same period the year before, according to Treasury data. Cenk. You're muted.
Yeah. So, first of all, I thought we were going to get supply side economics here, that when we lowered corporate taxes, that magically we were going to get more money into the government. It turns out we got less money into the government. Oh, wow. It turns out it is voodoo economics. Of course. We've been through this for 40 straight years. All these lackeys, and yeah, they're mainly Republicans, but yeah, the Democrats usually go along and saying there was nothing we could do. There was nothing we could do. I've been cutting taxes for corporations as long as I've been alive. They've been promising more revenue. It's never happened. We're in $38 trillion in debt. So this is us American taxpayers borrowing more money to give more to corporations. So as if the corporations don't have enough already. It's in violation of a pact that 140 countries signed to have 15% minimum tax on all corporations, because what the corporations were doing is that they were going and trying to find any cheesy country that would let them slide with no taxes, and then they'd move their headquarters theoretically over there, and they'd get to avoid taxes through all these tricks. And there was the double Dutch, there was the Irish sandwich, there was all these tax loopholes, right? So, and we were perplexed when Biden did this minimum 15% tax, because we're like, wow, look at corporate Democrat Joe Biden actually being tough on corporations. Way to go, Joe. We gave him credit. And then I looked into it and realized, oh no, he was forced into it by the 139 other countries. And now Trump is saying, who cares about the other stinking countries? Let's let the corporations rob us blind, right? So what, they can't even pay 15%? So many average Americans pay way more than that, 20%, 25%, 40%. You put in city and state, some people are up to 50% or more, but the most profitable corporations in the world only have to pay 15%. Do you get it by now, guys? This is not a government of the people, by the people, for the people. This is a government of the donors, by the donors, for the donors. So yes, they're gonna rob you again. It'll probably pass again. But Anna, I think that they're on the verge of destruction here because unemployment is up. Inflation is up, and AI is about to wipe out a gigantic amount of jobs. And I think that once Humpty Dumpty falls off that wall, they're not going to be able to put it back together again. And when people look back at these tax cut after tax cut, not for the average guy, but trillions of dollars in tax cuts for corporations, at some point they're going to get furious at what happened.
Yeah, I mean, look, I really worry about the eventual, I don't know when it's going to happen, but the eventual backlash to how rigged the economic system is in favor of corporate interests, especially at a time when, I know that this was a talking point by Republicans for a long time. And, I'm guilty of clowning them for it, mostly because they were hypocrites and never actually cared to do anything about it. But the federal debt, I am worried about, Cenk. I mean, how bad is this going to get? And if we're already spending $1 trillion on servicing that debt, like where does this end? There's no indication that there's any leader who has any real interest in doing something about the federal debt. Like we're just going to keep printing money?
Yeah.
It's distorting the market.
So, Anna, I've been consistent on this from day one. So I pissed off a lot of people on the left when I said, look, I don't agree with Stephanie Kelton when she has this magical thinking on how deficits don't matter. And I disagree with Dick Cheney when he said deficits don't matter. So every once in a while when the left is in charge or the right is in charge, all of a sudden they decide that deficits don't matter. No, if you had a small amount of deficits that you were able to pay off fairly consistently without gigantic interest rates, et cetera, the deficit, it's not like you can't ever go into deficits. I get it. Sometimes you need to invest in things, right? But having these kind of permanent, gigantic deficits where we're basically giving the banks and Wall Street trillions in interest.
Yep.
It's just a robbery. And we're almost forced into this debt by the system that we have, the financial system that we have. And but the way to break that cycle is to have just one president represent the American people, but we never get that. All we get is Obama bailing out the banks and making sure that they all got their bonuses after they destroyed the world economy and cost us 12 million jobs. We have Trump cutting corporate taxes 3 times now, adding at last count about 8 trillion out of the 38 trillion the deficit. That was actually in his first term. He's added 4 trillion more in corporate tax cuts this time, and this will add even more. And at some point, like I said, we're gonna wake up and realize that this was the great American robbery. The cultural wars were the distraction, and mainstream media was the getaway car.
Yeah, I think you're totally right about that. Anyway, we'll stay tuned to see when this policy is announced. But for now, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about what jobs are looking like in the US.
All right, back on TYT. Let's go to Super Chat. Rai K says, Anna, did you see that Bibi claimed that the hero who saved lives at the Bondi Beach was Jewish?
Yep.
He's utterly insane. His hatred for Muslims knows no bounds. So he did say that initially. He then corrected it later because he took a lot of heat for it. And I guess he's like, oh, I guess we can't lie about that. His name is Ahmed El Ahmed. So,
which,
like,
by the way,
sure it's not Ahmed El Ahmedistine?
I think a hero deserves a little diversity in the first and last name situation. I'm just saying, okay?
That's a different issue. All right. Badshaw Knight of Gotham says GOP leaders like Tom Cotton promote military escalation with no plan for peace, leaving America trapped in costly wars abroad while supporters feel betrayed by broken promises of restraint. Well, there's no question about that. They said no more wars, and now Trump's planning comical, ridiculous, insane wars. Wrote in again, time to expose the real oppression, ethnic cleansing, bombings, apartheid policies, highlight Islamophobia fueling it all, truth over smears, time to call out the actual human rights abusers.
Yep.
Look, I don't much use the word Islamophobia. I think it's less about fear, more about hatred and bigotry and stuff. And I don't think that that's the driving force. I think that that's a convenient thing that the supporters of Israel use to get us to think that Muslims are the boogeyman, and then you should give Israel hundreds of billions of dollars to kill them. But the number one driving force is donor money, period. Corporations, oil companies, defense contractors, Israel. The connective tissue is not any religion or hatred or bigotry. The connective tissue is the donors' cash to politicians. They're all bribed. They're all criminals. Andy Min 2300 writes in a YouTube member section, I wonder if this is Trump trying to remain relevant. If the donors are pushing for Congress to support Trump because they want more cuts, it'll delay Trump turning into a lame duck. That's an interesting theory. And Trump loves making the donors happy. He knows where his bread is buttered. So he's never represented you. He's never gonna represent you. Unfortunately, a lot of folks in this country were misled into thinking that he was their savior. But I am seeing now at lightning speed, people waking up and going, no, not savior. Just like the rest of them. They're getting more and more furious as we speak. Yvonne U715M says, Anna, that was good investigative journalism.
Thank you.
So that was great. Bernie Knuckles says Donald making the stereotype true. I don't know which one that is, but I'm sure he is. Yvonne also wrote in, please can you keep in your thoughts 8 Palestinian Action hunger strikers. They've now been on hunger strike for 46 days. British government refuses to meet relatives or legal representatives. Well, like British government, American government, they couldn't care less about Muslims. They think our lives are worthless. If the Palestinians were Jewish, do you think we would have had a different reaction? Can we keep it real? We would have had a massively different reaction. Massive, massive, massive. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Before we get back to the stories, real quick note from our sponsor, Prize Picks. They're our podcast sponsor. This week, there's a special max discount promotion live on the board right now. Anthony Joshua has been discounted to only needing to go for more than half at total punches landed in the boxing match against Jake Paul. That means they're giving you a free win, basically. Just add another player to your lineup, and if your pick hits, you can cash in. So download Prize Picks app today and use code TYT to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code TYT to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Look, I keep it real. You guys know me. I love guessing at the sports. I use Prize Picks. So far, I'm not that good at it. I'm keeping it real, but the free $50 helps. So use the promo code TYT. All right, Anna, what's next?
All right, let's get to what's currently transpiring with jobs in the US.
It is, now that we have almost a year into the second Trump administration, fascinating, not surprising, but fascinating how closely they have tied themselves to AI. The amount of stock increase that's tied to AI right now is stunning and horrifying.
Like more than all of it.
Yep, they now are going to have on their hands responsibility. Like people will point to them. They would have done it anyway, but they basically have bear hugged these big tech companies that are going pedal to the metal on LLMs, artificial intelligence, and what's likely to happen in the next couple of years is mass displacement.
As of November of this year, unemployment in the United States reached the highest levels in more than 4 years. And unemployment continues to rise, unfortunately, which is leading to some red flags about our current economic situation here in the US. And the real question is, are Americans going to blame President Donald Trump and his administration as more and more jobs go by the wayside and are replaced by AI? Now, in the near term, you might be asking, should we be panicking? And I'm wondering what you think, Cenk. What are your 2 cents?
Yeah, definitely. You should be panicking. And I almost never say that. I'm the biggest alarmist in the country on AI. I think that it is going to create an unemployment catastrophe like we've never seen in our lifetimes. And Donald Trump is utterly unprepared for it. It'll destroy his presidency. He won't know how to respond. But that's not good news because the country will be in terrible shape. So this is the tip of the iceberg. Well, let's tell you about the tip, and then I want to come back and talk about the iceberg.
All right, so here are the details. Now, look, it really depends on who you ask whether or not we should be panicking right now. Obviously, Cenk thinks we should, but let's get to the very minute details here because the unemployment rate is still relatively low, but it did rise to 4.6% last month in November, which is the highest that it's been in more than 4 years. Now, we did gain 64,000 jobs in November. That sounds pretty good. But you also have to keep in mind that we lost 105,000 jobs just a month prior in October. So we're in a hole when it comes to loss of jobs. Now, keep in mind that some economists are basically taking this jobs report with a grain of salt because of the pretty long government shutdown, which did have an impact by distorting the data. It's also worth noting that last month's numbers were affected by the government layoffs from earlier this year. So employees who are on paid leave are counted as employed in the monthly jobs numbers. And many government workers who took deferred buyouts were paid through September 30th. So in other words, those layoffs are already announced, but technically many federal workers only just left their jobs. So the numbers could actually be a little worse than we know. Now, federal government employment shrunk by 6,000 jobs in November, adding to a massive loss of 162,000 federal jobs in October. Now, just getting back to the question of whether Trump is going to face consequences for the jobs numbers. I think when it comes to federal workers, his base wanted less federal workers. So if they keep that in mind, I don't think that they're going to punish Trump at all, when it comes to these job numbers. But the question is there going to be in-depth reporting that shows that a lot of jobs were lost in, the federal worker area? Now, federal government employment is down by about 270,000 since January, and that's according to the Labor Department. It's the lowest level in more than a decade. And taking out the impact of the government sector, the economy then added 121,000 private sector jobs over October and November. Okay, so we return to the question: should we be worried about this month's job report? And Joseph Barelas, who is the chief economist over at RCM, says that he's certainly concerned, but he says, "I'm not saying this is a harbinger of a recession, but we have some real challenges to the economy that we didn't have 1 year ago." But others are discounting the report entirely because of the delayed federal worker layoffs and possibly skewed data. What economists do seem to overall agree on is the fact that we are now in a low hire, but also low fire economy. In other words, companies aren't doing much in terms of hiring more workers, but they're also not engaging in mass layoffs either. What do you think, Cenk?
Yeah, that's why I say it's the tip and not the iceberg, but the iceberg's coming. So right now you got the federal government workers, but it's a small portion of the economy. So those are more of a tragedy on a personal level. Obviously it affects the numbers overall, but the private economy is much larger. And in that economy right now, there's some hiring that's happening as we push forward towards AI. But what's going to happen is once AI starts to succeed and they start to replace jobs, both white collar and blue collar jobs, the bottom's going to fall out. like Anna, I don't understand why people can't understand simple logic. All of the AI companies, all of the experts are all telling us that the AI is going to wipe out giant sectors of the economy, and the AI and robots are going to be able to do the jobs that people do now and at a much lower rate, so people won't be hired anymore. Do people think they're lying? Do people think that they don't know what they're talking about? Why are we not getting prepared for a massive, historic, unprecedented unemployment? I mean, we had 10% unemployment would destroy this economy. And I think that's the bare minimum of what AI is going to do. So to me, that's not the question. The only question is, when is it going to start happening? And what are we going to do about it? And right now, I know the answer to the second question. There isn't a single person in Congress that has a plan for how to deal with AI unemployment. Trump obviously has no idea, totally oblivious. He doesn't know natural intelligence, let alone artificial intelligence. The only guy I know of that's starting to make a plan is, as usual, Ro Khanna, right? But other than that, we are so unprepared. And when the layoffs start to happen on a mass scale, what are we going to do? How are we going to take care of all those people? We already have a $38 trillion debt. Well, we're going to pile on more debt to take care of people who are unemployed on a mass scale. And now the government is spending more money and potentially creating more inflationary pressure, so maybe getting stagflation. No, guys, you gotta start saving. You gotta start making sure your family's gonna be okay. I don't mean to panic you, and I'm Mr. Hope, but AI is coming, and it's gonna obliterate a lot of things in its path, and we're not anywhere near ready.
Let's do one more story before we move on to our final break. I wanted to talk a little bit about the reaction to Trump's statements following the gruesome murders of Rob Reiner and his wife.
Even if you don't agree with Rob Reiner politically, there was no reason for his statement. I thought that statement was absolutely, completely below the office of the President of the United States, classless, and it was just wrong.
Well, believe it or not, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene is not the only Republican lawmaker who is condemning President Donald Trump over his reaction to the gruesome murders of Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle. Tragic murder that took place. Their own son is alleged to have killed them. And Cenk, before I give you some of the details and what Trump said, what are your 2 cents?
So I think this story is relevant for you understanding how little empathy the president of the United States has, and it's a very dangerous thing. But maybe even more important politically is the Republicans abandoning him over and over again. I'm going to give you more examples than this, but they're starting to realize this is a sinking ship.
So here's what Trump wrote on Monday after news broke that the Reiners had been murdered by their own son. Just absolutely tragic. You should be able to put politics aside, but I guess not. He said, a very sad thing happened last night in Hollywood. Rob Reiner, a tortured and struggling, but once very talented movie director and comedy star, has passed away together with his wife, Michelle, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and inaccurate affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS. They were murdered by their son, who has been struggling with drug addiction. Something that Trump is pretending like he cares about as he drags the United States into a war with Venezuela. But let me continue with the rest of his statement. He said of Reiner, he was known to have driven people crazy by his raging obsession of President Donald J. Trump, with his obvious paranoia reaching new heights as the Trump administration surpassed all goals and expectations of greatness. And with the golden age of America upon us, perhaps like never before, may Rob and Michelle rest in peace. He's disgusting. He's just and you want to talk about like paranoia reaching new heights. Like he still won't shut up about how the 2020 election was allegedly stolen from him. Like, take a look in the mirror, bozo. Now that statement was obviously gross and narcissistic, but what made things even worse was, again, the nature of how Reiner and his wife died. So Nick Reiner, the 32-year-old son of the couple, was arrested earlier this week and was formally charged yesterday with 2 counts of first-degree murder. And while the details were still limited when Trump made that post, there were enough details to know that this was in fact a gruesome attack on a beloved film icon. And so Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie were 2 of the first people in the Republican side of the aisle who condemned Trump about the post. Massie said, regardless of how you felt about Rob Reiner, this is inappropriate and disrespectful discourse about a man who was just brutally murdered. I guess my elected GOP colleagues, the VP, the White House staff, will just ignore it because they're afraid. I challenge anyone to defend it. And I do want to hear a little more from Congresswoman Greene from her CNN appearance last night, because in this interview, she makes clear that she's not a cardboard cutout of Trump. Take a look.
MAGA faithful reacted big time, and they called it out. It's all over social media. People, his supporters, including myself, we didn't appreciate hearing the president, who himself was shot, and after Charlie Kirk's horrific murder, we didn't appreciate, even if you don't agree with Rob Reiner politically, there was no reason for his statement to be the statement that he made.
Yeah, when he says, I mean, this was in the immediate aftermath of us finding out about Rob Reiner, and obviously now his son has been taken into custody. You've said that his murder was not about politics or political enemies. The president called him bad for our country and said he was a deranged person as far as Trump is concerned.
I thought that statement was absolutely, completely below the office of the president of the United States, classless, and it was just wrong.
And while other conservatives also condemn Trump, that includes Jenna Ellis, Robbie Starbuck. I don't even know who Robbie Starbuck is, but yeah, Robbie Starbuck, Riley Gaines, like a bunch of right-wingers did condemn Trump. There were a few people who decided to join Trump in the disgusting commentary. I want to skip ahead to the last graphic here. Of course, Laura Loomer never misses an opportunity to show us how disgusting she really is. She says that Rob Reiner was a loser. Naturally, his son was also a loser, and he got addicted to drugs and allegedly murdered his parents. I got news for you, Laura Loomer. A lot of Americans are struggling with addiction, and that doesn't make them bad people. It means that they need help, they need compassion. Yeah, in some cases, they might need tough love. But like calling people who are struggling with addiction losers is so disgusting, and making light of this is also disgusting. Finally, she says, looks like Rob should have spent more time parenting and less time spreading Russia conspiracy hoaxes about President Trump. I stand with President Trump. Laura Loomer's a traitor to the country, doesn't give a damn about this country, spends all of her time campaigning on behalf of Israel. And like the fact that she has any influence over the Trump administration is like one of the biggest injustices to the American people. But anyway, Cenk, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so look, this is as ugly as it gets. And it's so ugly that it's almost impossible for anyone to defend it, although Greg Gutfeld gave it a try. And so he's lost a lot of Republicans on this because they just can't stomach saying that the guy who was brutally murdered by his son is somehow the bad guy because he once criticized Trump. Trump has no bounds of decency. Guys, do you get it? I know 98% of you get it, but like if Trump can't have empathy for Rob Reiner in this situation and his wife, can he have empathy for anyone?
No.
Anyone at all?
No, he's sociopathic.
And so when a so-called leader doesn't have empathy for any of the people he is leading, that means we're all in a lot of trouble because he doesn't care about us. And unfortunately, these politicians, almost all of them don't care about us, but Trump always takes it to another level. But now, politically, the more relevant part of this is, and Marjorie Taylor Greene pointed this out in her interview too, the Indiana Republicans broke with Donald Trump. Today we saw the 4 Republicans in the House break with their party to say that we should vote on the Obamacare subsidies. And almost every Republican's come out to condemn him on the Rob Reiner's comments. The dam is breaking. And that's literally what Marjorie Taylor Greene said. The dam is breaking. And today, I mean, to give you a sense of the outer edges of the dam, or maybe in their case for the right wing, they may be the inner edges of the dam, I don't know. Alex Jones and Nick Fuentes got together to kvetch about Trump. And they were like, no, and they said his attacks against Marjorie Taylor Greene are unhinged, don't make any sense. Marjorie Taylor Greene is as true right winger as it gets in the country. And Joe's like, well, maybe he'll turn around, but he's got to turn around because this is heading to disaster. And Fuentes was like, no, he's done. He's a bad guy. And so it's not to say we agree with Fuentes and Jones. It's to tell you that the dam is breaking everywhere on the right wing, and Trump can't contain it. And the more unpopular he gets, Anna, and you're seeing it in the polling now, he's as unpopular as Biden ever was and dropping. And he's as unpopular as he has ever been and dropping. The more people feel emboldened to oppose him, and that's what we're starting to see everywhere now.
I think you're absolutely right about that. And I think Susie Wiles sees it too, which is why she wants him to stop focusing on, foreign affairs and focus on domestic issues. But he can't help himself. He's going to prioritize the highest bidder. Anyway, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about Fox News and their newly launched War on Christmas.
All right, let's go to YouTube members. Gummy Ryan says, I worried about the heavy pollution these data centers are causing, especially with the rollback on EPA regulations. Oh, yeah. I mean, that is one of many, many problems that these are going to create. Bernie Sanders is fighting back. He's, again, among the very few that are. Stephanie F 2027 says, rain or shine, healthy or sick, Cenk and Anna deliver grade A content daily, it seems. Truly admirable. In my opinion, the work ethic. Thank you, we appreciate that. Yeah, I'll tell you why I do it. I care. I want to comment on these stories. I want to let you guys know what I know for what it's worth. And I've got a great guest coming up. He's gonna be fighting against Richie Torres for the Congress seat, knock out one of AIPAC's favorite Congress people. That would be awesome. Good friends and ally with Zoran Mamdani, so I'm going to do that interview for you guys at the top of the hour. And then, by the way, I'm going to do. I'm going to cover Trump's speech. So we're not going to stream it, but after Trump's speech, come back. I'll do a live episode on it. Microgram says, "Welcome, Sick Uger, to the show." My name does sound a little bit like that. Anyways, Pagan Dragon 41567 says on Twitch, love you all for making sense out of all this chaos. Love you, Dragon Daddy and the Dragon Squad. Teddy Lucy Linda at TYT.com member section says Rob Reiner was liked and admired by many people on the right who knew him. 47 just can't help himself because he's a sociopath. Like James Woods, he's a terrible guy, very right-wing actor. And he was like beside himself with sorrow for what happened to Rob Reiner, because apparently everyone has a bottom except Trump, right? So it's a couple of ways to interpret that. All right. Dirge says, that is the thing, Cenk. They are not going to take care of the people who are unemployed. They can just die for corporate profits. I know, but at some point, the people are going to fight back. And so, no, I'm super worried about it. Okay. Little Mac McChee says, I actually think a bunch of businesses are going to fall for the hype, fire people, and try to replace with AI, and then go, holy crap, sucks, and there will be a panic hiring real people back. Maybe for some, but But overall, even if they'll get through that wave and they'll figure it out. And I don't know what the future looks like, and I don't say that often, but I'm definitely worried about it.
Cenk, can I interject because I have to share this. So Congress is giving itself an early holiday break. House GOP leadership is canceling Friday votes, letting members skip town tomorrow afternoon instead. Why is that an issue? Well, keep in mind, Congress is supposed to be voting on legislation that would rein in Trump's efforts to go to war with Venezuela without congressional approval, number one. The other thing is the Epstein files are supposed to be released on Friday. So Mike Johnson is just a slimy person. Let's just keep it 100.
They're gonna get caught. They think they can't go. Mike Johnson and Trump are both gonna. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Anna's got more news.
Before we get to our next story, Congress has already voted against the war powers resolution that would have prevented, theoretically, Trump from going to war with Venezuela. So great job, Congress. Anyway, let's get to our next story.
This farm is 150 acres. Yeah, they're going to be farms. And there will be transmission lines that have to go through developments and farms. That's the very nature of a growing economy. Everybody needs to get on board. I just don't. You know what? Buy a fake tree.
Oh, dagger right in my heart, Dagan.
What? I have a fake tree.
Dagan. Oh,
I have a beautiful
Dagan.
Well, unlike Dagan McDowell over at Fox Business, some American Christians who celebrate Christmas don't see Christmas trees the way she sees the human face. They don't want the fake thing, they want the real thing. And now Fox has decided to launch their own version of the war on Christmas on behalf of AI companies that are looking to build data centers across the nation. So that would be a little disastrous, especially since some of these data centers could be displacing, I guess, tree farms and replacing them with the data centers. Cenk, what are your 2 cents?
Sounds like a war on Christmas, if you ask me.
I mean, honestly, how is this not an assault on Christmas when you think about it? Where you're prioritizing corporate interests, in this case, tech companies, and telling Americans who want to celebrate Christmas and might want a real tree to buzz off and just get a fake one. Who cares? By the way, I actually do have a fake Christmas tree. I don't buy new ones. It's just too difficult. It's a mess with the new ones. And it could be a fire hazard. So it's not like I'm against fake Christmas trees. None of them are made in America, by the way. I was specifically looking for an American-made Christmas tree. None of them are made in America. All of them are made in China. Okay, with that in mind, McDowell was discussing this proposed transmission line in Virginia. It would stretch 67 miles and would be used to power AI data centers in the state. Now, Virginia farmers have stated that the line could cost them literally millions of dollars in land and business. And the line would also run through parts of Maryland, even though it would have no direct benefit to any Maryland residents. So, I mean, that's a massive injustice. And while McDowell doesn't really care what happens to like everyday Americans and small business owners, there is one senator who seems to care a lot.
Who is aggressively pushing these technologies? Well, surprise, surprise. It happens to be the very wealthiest people on earth, people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Peter Thiel. Do you believe that these guys, these multi-billionaires, are staying up nights worrying about what AI and robotics will do to the working families of our country and the world? Well, I don't think so. Elon Musk recently said, quote, AI and robots will replace all jobs. Working will be optional, end quote. If AI and robotics eliminate millions of jobs and create massive unemployment, how will people survive if they have no income?
I mean, regardless, colossal data centers are sprouting up across the country, and they're set to consume mind-boggling amounts of energy and water. So by 2030, industry and government projections show data centers could gobble up more than 10% of the nation's power usage. And keep in mind, this is happening while blue states want to pivot to EVs entirely. California implemented a ban on gas-powered vehicles in a few years, and our power grid is already overwhelmed. Like, we're just not prepared for this, and communities are already suffering as a result of these data centers. So estimates vary, but all show a dizzying rise of between 60 and 150% in energy consumption by 2030. On average, they project US data centers will use about 430 trillion watt hours by 2030. That is enough electricity to power nearly 16 Chicagos. And a small minority of elected Republicans are starting to get nervous about, what the voters are going to think about this, because there could be serious political ramifications thanks to these data centers. Representative Bob Whitman, for instance, is one of them. He says, I think people have very legitimate concerns, and that is, who is going to pay the bill for the additional energy that's demanded from this? They go, my power bill's gone up because somebody down the road is building a data center. So this is a very real problem, and there have been some local news reports featuring residents in various communities where data centers have already been built, Cenk, and it's actually taking up a lot of water as well. So they'll turn on their tap, and the reporter will be there filming it. They turn on their tap, no water comes out. I mean, we don't have the infrastructure for this, and no one cares other than the actual residents who are being harmed by this. What do you think?
So I think 10% extra in energy usage is a colossal number. It's a unfathomably large number from just one industry. That's crazy. So that's on top of all the other problems that AI is going to bring. But it's symbolic, right? They're literally sapping the energy out of the American government, country, people. They're bleeding us dry. No water, no electricity. Did you notice that quote at the end there? We're gonna have to pay higher energy costs.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we paying for it? If it's their cost, they should be paying for it. That's how capitalism is supposed to work. You don't take your cost and then just give it to someone else. That's not a free market. That's crony capitalism, that's corporatism, that's corporations stealing our government from us, making us pay all of the costs of the severe weather events. We all have to pay for the cleanup of the tornadoes, the hurricanes, and every other thing that happens. Now we got to pay for the extra energy costs of these guys who are going to make trillions of dollars. If you're going to make so much money from it, what are we paying your bills for? And then on top of that, we give $35 billion a year in oil subsidies. This is just robbery after robbery after robbery. So, and now they're coming after Christmas. I mean, look, it's kind of a funny part of the story, of course, but it's also telling because what do we always tell you guys? Like all of politics and the media and stuff is theater, right? So there's good cop, bad cop, but really they have the same objective. So they get us to fight on the culture wars. So the way that it's related to this story is Fox News came up with this ridiculous idea, over a decade ago, where Bill O'Reilly started saying, "Oh, the liberals have a war on Christmas. They only say happy holidays. We hate that. No happy holidays. It's got to be Merry Christmas. You understand that, you Jews, Muslims, and atheists? It's all your fault, right?" And I was like, okay, it's culture wars to devise. Now, and that was to help corporate interests. Distract everyone so you don't notice the giant corporate tax cuts, the giant subsidies, the giant bank bailouts, etc. Right? Now they've turned all the way around to screw Christmas. Who cares? The corporations need those Christmas trees. Shut up! Give us all your Christmas trees. We're gonna butcher them.
Who cares about the farmers, right? Who cares about the small businesses and the farmers? I know, it is amazing. But you know what? I love that she had her mask off moment. I mean, we always suspected that they were disingenuous about their war on Christmas arguments or their pretend concern about farmers or small business owners. Now it's just abundantly clear. They will do anything and say anything on behalf of corporate interests.
Yeah. And I like that you looked into fake American Christmas trees and couldn't find any.
Yeah.
The Chinese must be laughing their ass off as they make Christmas trees for us and we pay them for celebrating Christmas.
I know it's impossible, but I really do go out of my way to try to buy American or, shop at consignment shops and things like that. But anyway.
Well, Anna, I did you one better. I got a Christmas tree from America itself. My nephew is a sawyer. That is a professional at cutting down trees in the forest. Okay, and with permission and going through the legal channels, we went out, or he went out with my daughter Joy, and they cut down a tree and brought it here. And we had like a National Lampoon kind of moment where we had trouble fitting it into the house. But we have an honest to goodness, real American tree in our house for Christmas.
All right. The revolution is next.
Okay, see you there. All right, guys, welcome to the revolution. So I've got a great guest coming up for you guys in a minute. But first, I want to tell you, you know how we're building corruptionwatch.us? That's the website that tracks the politicians, their donors, and the bills, and matches up the donors with the bills. And so it's a great effort. But we need a couple more coders. So the guys who started building this site have done great work. Shout out to Arpon. But if you're a coder out there, hope@tyt.com. We need your help. And you could make a big difference for us. hope@tyt.com. Email us there. And we'd love to hear from you and get your help. Okay. All right. Now joining me is Michael Blake. He is a former New York State Assemblyman. He's running against Richie Torres, one of the most AIPAC-funded pro-Israel congressman in the country. And it's not that he's pro-Israel. He's pro-Israel's genocide. I can go on and on. In fact, I will during this interview. But first, Michael, welcome.
Good to see you, John. Appreciate you, brother. How you doing?
No problem. I'm good. So, Michael, you've got a lot of interesting things in your background. This election is about both you and Torres, of course. You ran for mayor for New York. You're an associate pastor. And I don't know what that is, so I'm kind of curious about it. And then there's something in your bio. Well, there's two things in your bio that I'm worried about. One is like cinnamon raisin bagels with ketchup. That's unacceptable. And worked at the White House under Obama.
Oh my goodness. That first one is like the most controversial thing I ever hear all the time, but I'm ready.
Okay. I mean, it's a heavy charge, I'm about to say, but it's a little Trumpy. What is cinnamon raisin bagel with ketchup? How did that even come about?
Look, I mean, I'm from the Bronx, man. We do things differently out here. I mean, people could talk about bacon, egg, and cheese, and that'd be the easy, straightforward thing. Or, you gotta have a cinnamon raisin bagel, bacon, egg, and cheese. The cholesterol is a little ridiculous. The calorie intake's ridiculous. Don't worry, but it is delicious. That's what matters. So that'd be my morning and an oxtail at night, and that's how we keep the party going.
You lost me again at oxtail. I was about to come around when you start talking about bacon, egg, and cheese. All right. We'll work on it. So we'll come back to Obama. But let's talk about Richie Torres. So for the folks at home who don't know, tell us about who he is. That's the incumbent Democrat in the seat you're running for.
You have someone in me who born and raised in the Bronx, grew up here, Crescent and Burnside, PS 79, 118, DeWitt Clinton High School, worked in DC, came back home, been doing the work on the ground. Served as an assembly, My Brother's Keeper program, served as a vice chair so we can get more Black and brown people elected to office, as opposed to Rich Torres. Rich Torres is the man who voted with Republicans on the Laken-Riley Act so that increased deportations would happen. Rich Torres is a man who has talked about what's happening in Israel, in particular AIPAC, 236% more than he talks about poverty. Rich Torres is someone who has had one bill that has become a law that he's prime responsible of. So when we talk about raising wages, that's what I want to do. We talk about reduced cost of living, that's what I want to do. When you talk about actually reimagining the Bronx, that's what I want to do. Richie Torres has made it very clear that helping the people of the Bronx is not his priority. And he's only been focused on helping himself. And also it came out publicly that Richie has been investing in the bombs maker for what's going on in the war. So if you want something different, you want something real, you actually want a real Democrat, my name is Michael Blake and I want to be a congressman.
So I just looked it up. Richie Torres is taking at least $1.6 million from the Israeli lobby. And Michael, so I want to stay on that for a second, right? Look, some people love Israel and they might be in your district, they might not. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And we get it, okay? But Richie Torres seems obsessed. He's constantly talking about how Israel is great and how they got to do a genocide and how we have to pay for it. And then you find out that he's taking $1.6 billion from these folks. Do you think that there might be a connection with the money he took and how obsessed he is with helping Israel and its war crimes?
Well, it's obvious. I mean, and not only that, you think about how he was one of the people who spoke out against President Biden repeatedly in saying that we actually shouldn't have accountability to what's going on in the Israeli government. So when we think about what's happening there, we should be spending money on books. We should be spending money on helping people address what's going on with SNAP. We should be helping people right now that are afraid about their healthcare subsidies are going to be gone. We should be protecting our immigrants. That is what we should be doing. We should be helping the close to 1 million Black women who have lost their jobs in the federal government because of Donald Trump. That's what we should be doing. But you have someone who's made a decision, Richie Torres, and taking money from AIPAC and taking money from what's happening in the Israeli lobby is more important than helping the people. And I've been very clear about this. Someone can have an evolution and on the journey. I've been very clear about this. I've been on this journey myself. But you gotta understand that when you see what's been happening, especially the last 2 years, that you gotta take a stand. And Richie has made a decision that he cares more about what is happening in another country than what he cares about what's happening in his own community.
Mm-hmm. So, it's interesting because in the old days, 2 years ago, being the old days, if you called out Richie Torres for taking all this AIPAC money, people would get upset and everybody would get called anti-Semites and all this stuff. And it was basically covered up and media didn't really talk about it. But nowadays, I mean, there's two Democrats most known for supporting Israel's war crimes. It's John Fetterman and Richie Torres. So what do you think made the difference? And do you think it'll make a difference in this race? Like, has it filtered down to the actual voters yet? Because usually the media is terrific at tricking the voters into thinking that these politicians are on their side, when in reality they're serving the donor class. But do you think the message has gotten home to the Bronx and to the voters?
Some. Look, we have people on the block right now, I think, who will come to us and say, he doesn't take about housing, doesn't talk about education, doesn't talk about jobs, doesn't talk about anything that we actually care about. That's what people want to actually talk about. And they're pissed, they're angry, they're upset. And we got to be real clear that at the end of the day, you can be critical of Bibi Netanyahu, you can be critical of the government. That doesn't mean you're against the people, right? And they try to conflate the two. Being against a government doesn't make you anti-Semitic. Being against what Bibi is doing doesn't make you anti-Israel. But we want to be very clear at the end of the day that you got to say enough is enough. And that this nonsense can't continue. And how can I be an ordained reverend, a Black man who is watching what is going on, which is a genocide against the people, Black and brown people on the ground, and just be silent about that? And so when we think about what's at stake, I actually think we should be helping people actually get some jobs and keep their jobs and actually have a better chance on the ground. That's not what Richie's doing at all. And people just got to ask themselves, why did Richie go so hard in the paint against Zoran Mamdani in the election when I cross-endorsed with Zoran? Why did Richie say that he refused to be helpful to our communities? Why did he do these things? Because he effectively made the decision that it wasn't important, that you were not important. So I'm saying to you right now, you want a real Democrat, you want someone who's actually gonna fight for you, you want someone who's actually gonna listen to you and not be connected to the nonsense that is going on the other side. My name is Michael Blake, and rock with us right now and join us so we can go win this race.
Yeah, I got more questions along those lines, including on Zoran, but you mentioned rock with you and it made me think of your video for your campaign. So I wanna run a little piece of that for the folks at home so they can check it out, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
And as I was living in these slum conditions, the city was spending more than $100 million on a golf course.
Richie Torres invested in weapon makers. All these things I'm saying about Richie Torres.
Since 2021, Richie Torres has represented New York's 15th congressional district, the poorest congressional district in America. In 2025, Richie has nearly $15 million on hand, largely from AIPAC, while many of his constituents barely have $15 to get by. So he spent the last 15 days hearing from the people about why they are ready for a change.
I saw Richie Torres on Adam Friedland. I know he suffered, but what happens to you is you get bought. Yep. It is so hard to keep your moral integrity once you start taking the money.
He profited from it.
He talks about that place far more often than he talks about the Bronx.
You were criticized for Blackstone donation, the architects of the housing crisis.
What a asshole.
You cannot be a representative in the city of New York and you talk like that.
Forget, Richie Torres sucks.
Not as long as Richie Torres is a white mother. Richie Torres cares more about Bibi than he cares about the Bronx. more about AIPAC than he does about your academics.
To which I say, damn. Okay.
We have to keep it real. Let's be clear. That's who he is. He's made his decisions.
So, Michael, I think your race is going to be critical, pivotal, because it's going to test whether we've gotten past mainstream media or not. Because if you listen to national media, Richie Torres is an American hero who loves to start wars and help Israel, beloved Israel, etc. But if you find out the reality, you'd never vote for the guy. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. Along those lines, let me ask you real quick: how's the media treating the race so far? So I don't know, I haven't seen it, but have they been relatively fair to you, or have because in my experience, maybe it hasn't happened yet, but at some point when you're running against an establishment guy, they'll start running dirty campaigns and all of a sudden find a needle in a haystack and say, "Oh, can you believe this happened and that happened?"
Yeah, I mean, it's already begun, which I think the fact that it's already begun shows that they're afraid that we're going to win this thing, right? Why would you come for someone so early out the gate if they weren't afraid? Look, I think at the end of the day, we had people who tried to drop some oppo against us, oppo research against us, but we were able to shut down pretty quickly. And I want people to understand, Richie, when we jumped in the race, someone said, "Well, what do you think about Michael Blake?" And he said, "Oh, Richie Torres knows exactly who I am. Richie Torres understands that. Richie Torres used to walk with us on the block when we were at NYCHA Public Housing. Richie would sit with us in Little Italy when asking for advice. Now all of a sudden he's gotten confused. But let's remind him who we are. We're focused on helping the people, right?
Yeah.
And media is going to come for us, and we're not afraid, and we're ready to go do this, and we're going to win."
Well, you might remind him on primary night, so we'll look forward to that. So speaking of primaries, you mentioned Zoran earlier. So you're in the race for the mayor's seat, but you cross-promoted. What does that mean to cross-promote?
Yeah, Zoran Mamdani and I cross-endorsed each other in the primary because we were very clear that I wanted people to understand that if you were not going to be with me, then be with him and vice versa. And we wanted to send a clear message out here that we both were talking about cost of living. We both were talking about affordability. We both talking about the people in a very real way. And so we wanted to find those ways to be focused in helping people. And that's what Zoran and I did. Zoran and I talked about it, and I was excited to cross-endorse with them. Richie never did. People seem to forget. Richie was with Cuomo. Richie was actively with Cuomo. And he decided to help someone who was killing people in nursing homes rather than help someone that was inspirational. And so when you get a chance to go vote next year, you get to ask yourself, one person in this race publicly was with the mayor-elect, soon to be the mayor, and Michael Blake. Somebody else, Richie Torres, did everything to try to hurt Zoran. So what we got to do right now is if you want to be on the right side, come be with us. And if you want to be on the wrong side, like Richie was, go be with him.
Yeah, it's Michael Blake for Congress.com, by the way. We'll put the link in the description box below. Look, Richie Torres is an establishment as it gets, so it's not surprising that he was with Andrew Cuomo. But I mean, really, are there Democrats left in New York or with, and in that district in particular, that are with Cuomo? That's fascinating.
There were too many, but the combination of my votes and Zoran's votes in the primary exceeded Cuomo. Combination of my votes and Adrian Adams exceeded Cuomo. The people that were on the right side understood what we had to get done, right? And in the general election, Zoran won every assembly district in the general election. So people understand what's going down. They understand what we got to make happen, and they're ready for change. Now, some people may not agree with my bacon, egg, and cheese selections, which I'm okay with that. I'm not afraid of that. But they understood that they could rock with me when it comes to our candidates, and that's why I endorsed Zoran and why Zoran endorsed me. Why I'm grateful to be on his elected official advisory board. Reason why he spoke at my church just a few weeks ago. We're showing people what's possible, and if you want someone who can be an actual ally to Zoran Mamdani, you have it in me and Michael Blake. Richie Torres is not going to do anything to be helpful with Zoran. And if you want a new vision, you want a new generation, that's why we're running right now.
That's weird that Zoran spoke at a church. I heard he was going to do a Muslim takeover of New York.
Yeah, I heard Cuomo and Richie talking about that. Yeah, we heard that right there. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so talk to me about your top priorities. So if you get into Congress, what are you going to push for, Michael?
Cost of living has to be everything. Everything. You got 1 out of 4 New Yorkers who can't afford essentials right now, right? And so we want to reduce cost of living. We want to raise wages. We want to reimagine the Bronx. That's how we think about this, right? And so for housing, 3 things. We want to end credit scores for housing applications. We want to increase income limits for housing applications. We want to have local median income on housing applications. You do those 3 things, you change the game. We're going to cancel student debt. We're going to have student loan forgiveness. We got to be very intentional in helping our people. We need Medicare for all, and we need to protect our immigrants, not deport our immigrants. We need to actually stand up for our Black women who've been losing their jobs and stand up for our Latino communities that are not being helped. We need to stand up for our South Asian communities that are wondering what's going on in our community. We need to reject anti-Semitism and reject Muslim hate at the same time. So when you ask me about my main priorities, it's about cost of living and affordability, but it's about how we reimagine what's happening here in the Bronx to do it better, do it differently, and show that Richie Torres is effectively a MAGA Republican. He voted to increase deportations. What kind of Democrat would do that? He hasn't done anything to help us as a people, and that's why I'm running right now.
Yeah. So, Michael, do you take corporate PAC money?
No.
Okay. So, do you take Israeli lobby money?
No.
Okay, got you. All right, Michael, we ask this of everybody that comes on the show these days. So, what do you think is the top problem for the American government? So I'm not talking about policy that's going to help your district overall. I mean, specifically, I'm talking about big picture. What do you think is the problem that's plaguing the government the most, and how would you fix it?
We got a bunch of people right now who are making horrendous decisions because they're bought and paid for and they're beholden. Right? How the hell do you agree to end the government shutdown, but you cut Affordable Care Act subsidies for healthcare? How can you be silent on the nonsense of what's going on around a Charlie Kirk resolution? How can you actually take these steps, which people are doing right now because they're more beholden to their donors than the people? And you think about what's going on right now, the dynamic of the Supreme Court making a decision on will they end Section 2 in the Voting Rights Act so that 19 Black districts get eliminated, but at the same time, they'll have unlimited funding coming into our elections. We don't have time for that, right? So we gotta be very clear. Why are we still battling these fights? Because you have too many in the oligarch who do not give a damn about us. And if we are serious about change, we need new leaders. And that means we need real Democrats. Richie Torres is not that. Ask yourself, how does he help deport people with the Lake and Riley Act and they call himself a Democrat? Corruption is blocking us and we gotta do it differently.
So tell me what you did for the Obama White House.
I ran African-American outreach, had the largest increase in minority business contracts that happened in the history of a 2-year span. I created the Urban Entrepreneurship Summit Series, where we went to 7 cities around the country to help our entrepreneurs having a chance. Led county and state elected official outreach during the Affordable Care Act and ACA, so that we can actually have a chance for an opportunity that's there. And so we did the work, right? Did the work for that 2.5 years. And then left and then was the National Deputy Director of Operation Vote for the election, for the re-election. And before that, I worked for President Obama in Iowa and 7 other states. I led constituency outreach. I always tell people I was the other Black guy with Obama in Iowa right there, you know? So we were able to make that happen and change the game and then brought it back home. And then, look, we took that knowledge to then come back home. And when I was elected to the assembly, I served for 6 years here. I created the My Brother's Keeper program. It's still the only state in the country that has the My Brother's Keeper program for Black and brown youth to have a chance. $20 million to go to school and graduate from school. And I learned from that, from leading that effort in running African-American outreach for President Obama.
Okay, you didn't work for Tim Geithner or anything. Okay, good. Those
no.
Wonderful programs. So, and you're an associate pastor. What does that mean?
Union Grove Missionary Baptist Church. You're probably hearing the train in the background, so you're getting a real Bronx energy right now, everybody. So Union Grove Missionary Baptist Church, where our lead senior pastor is Reverend Frederick Crawford. I'm one of their assistant associate pastors, which we help them with the ministry. Also, I lead our MLK service. I lead our Kairos conversations so that we can be more engaged. Jan, we had a blessed opportunity. We helped feed 1,000 families for Thanksgiving. And I didn't say 1,000 people, 1,000 families, right? We're doing the work. We have affordable housing on both sides of our church. And so it matters to me and it's personal for me on how we're helping our people. And that's what we're doing in our ministry.
So one last thing, what made you get into politics? What were you doing? And then what happened and that made you go, well, I think maybe I should get in this line of work?
My full name is Michael Alexander Blake. And I'm a son of Jamaican immigrant. So let me give that vibe. Anyone who knows, I'm named after Michael Manley and Alexander Bustamante. My mama worked for 40 years, raising 4 boys. The matriarch and the queen of our family, my daddy, was a janitor at St. Barnabas Hospital. I have loved what politics can be when it's done right. When it's done right, when you actually help people, you can change the game in a powerful way. You can have the opportunities of healthcare. You can have the opportunities for student loan forgiveness. You can have climate change done in the right way. You can do these things for the right way, and the right reasons. And so what got me in is, I was in the spelling bee in elementary school. I lost it in 4th grade, but I won it in 5th grade. Not that I remember these things, right? Northwestern University student government. I'm a Prince Hall Mason. I'm a brother of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Brother 100 Black Men. I love what politics can be when it's done right. And so when you ask me what brought me to this, I tell people from the moment you're born to the moment you get called on home, there's nothing in your life that's happening without policy. It could be the gas, it could be the milk, it could be the bread, it could be the clothes. And so you got to have people actually give a damn about this and want to focus on this. And so what gets me going every single day is I want to help people. I want to change the game for people, right? I'm that kid that we sold dinners to pay rent in the Bronx. I'm that assembly member that in my first year, I slept on the couch because I couldn't afford not having that extra money while I was trying to lead. I'm that person who was born with a heart murmur and I fell asleep at the wheel in 2001, only here because of the hands of God. I know what this is like to be on the block and help the people. And I'm running against someone who does not care for the people. So if you're watching from around the country, as you're watching from around the country, Richard Torres is not one of us. Richard Torres has made decisions that are not on the right side. He is wrong on the war. He is wrong on immigration. He is wrong on cost of living. He is wrong on housing. And if you want someone who is actually here to actually fight for you, who cares for you and is going to give a damn for us, my name is Michael Blake, and I'm asking that you rock with us so I can go to Congress, represent the South Bronx, and represent our people for the reasons that are right, which is for us.
Yeah, Michael Blake for Congress.com. And you mentioned something there where the audience, I know went, uh-oh, because it's going to trigger me to say, oh, we got something in common. You're Jamaican. I don't know if you know this, but I'm Mr. Jamaica.
Here we go. Here we go. I've been waiting. I was waiting for when you were going to do this right here. I'm just going to let you be. I'm going to let you have your moment right here.
So, okay, fine. You twist my arm. I did go out with Miss Jamaica, Zara Burton. And in that time, I was Mr. Jamaica, I suppose. But, what can I do? We had a connection.
I mean, you out here. I'm gonna play the small fiddle and violin for you right now. I'm trying to get your Jamaican street cred right here. But from a Jamaican massive, you already know.
I do indeed. I was going to use some, words that I learned from Zara, but then I decided not a good idea.
No. We've been doing so well. Don't do it.
Okay, everybody check out Michael Blake for Congress.com. Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate it, and for running to give the people of that district a real choice for the first time in a long time.
I appreciate you, and I appreciate what you're doing every day. You're speaking truth to power, and it's necessary. And just know that many of us appreciate and need you to continue to use your voice. So much love. I'm with you all day, every day.
All right. Thank you for saying that too. All right, have a wonderful day.
You too, bro.
All right, guys. So for those who haven't heard it, oh no, am I going to tell you the Mr. Jamaica story in the bonus episode? Is that what I'm going to do? The full story? How I met her, how she became Miss Jamaica. If you don't know it, this is the time. Hit the join button below or tyt.com/join. See you there in a minute.